afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk with Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero. We are here with you for the next 3 hours today. There is a massive amount going on in the world of sports today, and we are so excited to talk about all of it with you here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. We've got college basketball to recap from last night, to preview for tonight. We've got some Chiefs and NFL news to get to. Combine going on, a couple of local products competing at, or testing, I should say, at the Combine today. Felix Anudike Uzama, who was getting a lot of praise on Twitter today for his response about his plan when he goes out there and he tries to get sacks and how he plays and how he kind of builds up an arsenal of moves against opposing tackles over the course of the game and the cerebral approach he takes. I know Trevor Sikkema, who's an NFL draft guy for Pro Football Focus, was all over that today. Lonnie Phelps from KU, he's there as well. It's defensive line testing day, so we will get you some updates, some testing updates on those guys if we get them in by the end of the show today. We'll talk plenty of KU and K-State basketball, of course. KU with a big win last night. It was a hideous game, a truly filthy, ugly, gross game. But KU won. KU wins the Big 12 championship, at least a share of it, for the 17th time in 20 years under Bill Self. We're going to get to all of that and another round of absolutely preposterous, insane stats about Bill Self and Kansas basketball coming up to lead things off here in just a little bit. K-State plays tonight. They will take on Oklahoma, looking to cap off what has been so far a 3-game winning streak, looking to win on their senior night. Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, they are being honored tonight. That's going to be so cool. The environment there to celebrate those two guys is going to be awesome. Cannot wait for that. We'll preview that game coming up on our own and with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. He is going to join us today at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. A lot to get to from this weekend. The 3-game winning streak K-State is on, looking ahead to the NCAA tournament seeding, and, of course, the game tonight against Oklahoma. We will talk some Chiefs coming up today. I saw an interesting piece from Arrowhead Pride about positions where the Chiefs don't need any help or positions the Chiefs don't need to address this offseason. And half of it or so I agree with. Half of it, though, I think I might disagree. So we'll talk about some potential ancillary needs for the Chiefs roster coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today. We'll get to some Wednesday night best bets in college hoops and elsewhere. And, of course, we'll get to our first What Is Wrong With You of the month. We've got a jam-packed edition of our 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we'll play One Gotta Go this hour. Plus, I should also mention, bottom of this hour, our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week. Our honorees this week, the Washburn Rural girls wrestling team, which for the third time in just 4 years, state champions in classes 6A, 5A. And I spoke today to Damon Parker, the head coach of Washburn Rural, who has been head wrestling coach for either the boys or girls for a long time at Washburn Rural. We've gotten to talk to him a few times in recent years because of all the championships that Washburn Rural has won. This is one of my favorite interviews we've done in the high school sports space in a long time. He is the best, and we are excited to talk to him coming up, or hear from him anyway, coming up at the bottom of this hour. You are welcome to be a part of the show as well on the Big O Tires text line. Let us know your thoughts on anything we're talking about today. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And you can also chime in the YouTube comment section as well. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Comment section wide open. We'd love to hear from you coming up on the show today. I wore a white hat today. I love this hat. It is it's got my favorite Cubs one of the good Cubs logos on it, not just the plain C, and it's pinstriped. It looks awesome in person. On video, under these industrial fluorescent lights we have, it looks like my head is glowing.
Yeah, you kind of washed out a little bit.
I have a spare hat in the car. I'm like, go grab it.
Under these Klieg lights we've got here.
Right. Look like we're in a warehouse somewhere. So if it looks a little weird on top of my head, that's why, but I promise it's just a Cubs hat. And again, we would love your thoughts on anything we are talking about on the show today. But we start with the Kansas Jayhawks, who for the 17th time in 20 years under Bill Self, and if you really want to break it down to an even smaller number, 17 times in the last 19 years. KU didn't win the first year that Self was at KU, and then won 14 in a row after that in the Big 12. 17 times in the last 2 decades, KU Big 12 champions. Now, just a note about that. We'll get to the game itself coming up here in just a moment. Do you know how many conference championships Duke won in 42 years under Mike Krzyzewski?
Wasn't that many. They stopped winning it after a while. They had quite a drought toward the end of winning the regular season. If I had to guess, is it 19?
13. 13 in 42 years. Coach K is in the conversation for greatest of all time.
I would argue he is. I would argue he is number one.
He had to compete in a much more difficult era than John Wooden did, because that's the two, right?
Yes, it's them. It's one of them one and one of them two. And the reason I'll make the argument for Krzyzewski is that he was successful in both of the iterations of college basketball as we have known them. The pre one and done era and then the post one and done era. He won championships in those eras.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely fair. Much more. As time goes on, in pro sports, we talk about it with the advent of free agency and different contracts and things like that. It's harder to win more recently than necessarily it was in the past, especially when leagues were smaller. John Wooden, a basketball genius, an incredible leader. He would have been great no matter what he did in his life. But also, you could really stockpile talent at UCLA and at the major programs at the time in a way that you just can't right now, that it's pretty much impossible to.
You got to keep Lou Alcindor for 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, you couldn't play him as a freshman, and he wasn't allowed to dunk, but you could play him for 3 years. And you could play Bill Walton for 3 years.
It was just cheating at the time. Truly cheating, really. So that all illustrate the point. KU's done it 17 times in 20 years. And I saw someone bring this up online yesterday, that it's almost like there's no way you could not underperform in the tournament. Like, Bill Self's got a massive number of NCAA tournament wins, a massive number of them, has been to 4 Final Fours, 2 national championships, a boatload of Elite Eights, like unbelievably successful. And yet still, it almost feels underwhelming to some people because, well, you won 17 league titles. You couldn't win more than a couple national titles. That's just how absurd things have been in the regular season for Kansas in recent years. And this year is no exception. This is the best the Big 12 has ever been, ever. You've got people from all over the sport, newcomers, younger guys, the old heads. They are all saying the same thing about how good the Big 12 is right now. And in the most difficult year in the Big 12 ever, with numerous legitimate national title and Final Four contenders, K-State, Texas, Baylor, TCU. At one point, it looked like Iowa State might even be in that conversation, although they're certainly not now. KU still won the league and has a chance to win it by multiple games. They could win it outright with a whole game to go, depending on what happens with Texas tonight. It's incredible what this team has been able to accomplish. And I understand at the same time, there are some folks, maybe in our area of a more purple persuasion, who say, oh, wow, what a big accomplishment. You were picked to finish second in the league after winning a national title, preseason top 5, and you won it again. Wow, big whoop. Okay, I understand where you're coming from. I can understand that viewpoint. But it's 17 in 20 years, man.
Nobody else is doing this.
No.
Like, there's no other school in any other league that is doing anything remotely close to this. Like, you have a good run at a lot of other places where you win 2 conference titles in a row. Or if you win 3 in 4 years, that's a great run. To win 17 in 20 years and to do it in a league that for a not insignificant portion of those 20 years has been one of, if not the best college basketball leagues in the country, it's mind-boggling. It boggles the mind. It truly does.
It is remarkable. And the way they did it last night was far from aesthetically pleasing. That game was hideous. KU could not hit the broadside of a barn. They went up by 9 at the break. It was the 4th lowest score that KU had allowed in the first half this season. 21 points. Tech looked terrible. KU didn't look great, but Tech looked terrible. Second half, KU could not hit anything. Then they started to make shots, but they couldn't get a stop on defense for what felt like an hour. Every time they would do something, Tech would cut it right back down to a 3-point game, down to a 2-point game. They got it down to 1 either once or twice in that second half. And while they never went ahead, never even tied it after halftime, they were never out of it, and it never quite felt like KU could put the game away as a whole unit, it didn't really feel like winning basketball for KU, which is strange to say because that's kind of become, the staple of this team, the staple of this franchise, so to speak, is winning time. This team is going to be better than anyone else. And KU came up with a few individual plays like that. Kevin McCullough, authoring a couple of them. The block on Kevin O'Banner was awesome. I leapt out of my seat when that happened. Okay. Look at that. And a little spice shown at the Texas Tech sideline as well. Then the scramble drill to get the loose ball, lay it in. And a lot of people said, that should have been a foul. If you look at any angle other than the TV broadcast, Davion Harmon barely got touched. That was very clearly not a foul. He just wasn't trying on the play.
Yeah, Texas Tech fans were like, he was barreled over. He didn't even get knocked down.
No, he barely got touched.
He was lightly dislodged and would not have been dislodged if he had been a little more forceful in fighting for the loose basketball like everybody else seemingly was willing to be.
So that was a winning play there. I thought Jalen Wilson did a good job of getting to the line. He was not good from the floor. He's now missed, I believe it's 17 threes in a row. He was 0 for 5 last night. He was just 6 of 16 overall, but 9 of 10 at the free throw line. He got there. He made things happen. And we'll get to Jalen specifically in a moment, but that's why this team still has a chance, even though they're probably less talented overall, and they're certainly less talented overall than last year's national championship group. They find ways to win. They can win tough games. They can win high-scoring affairs. They can blow teams out, or they can win them close. They just find a way. And in more so than even teams like the 21 team that was kind of a paper. They finished second in the league, but that was a team that was doomed to fail in the tournament. 2019, I think everybody knew, like Sweet 16 would have been a great accomplishment for that group. Things were just disjointed all year. This team, I think, is tougher than either of those teams, and last night was one of those games. They probably lose to 7 other Big 12 teams last night. They probably would have beaten Oklahoma, and they would have beaten this version of Iowa State, this most recent version of the Cyclones. But they play TCU. They probably lose that game. They play against Baylor. They probably lose playing that same game they played last night. But one, you don't apologize for wins in the Big 12. You don't apologize for Big 12 championships. And two, I don't feel bad about that and saying that because KU's already beaten all of those teams, many of them during the 6, now 7-game winning streak. So I don't feel any shame in saying that. KU should be proud of the title and proud of, again, finding a way to win a tough game.
Yeah, give Texas Tech a lot of credit. That was kind of the best version of Texas Tech. Really hard to play against, hard to finish around the rim against. Their size gave Kansas some trouble on both ends. Fardaws Aimaq probably played his best game of the year. Thought he was really, really good. With Aimaq in the fold, which he wasn't in the first meeting between these two teams, that was something different that KU hadn't had to contend with the first time around. And having that kind of size did seem to bother the Jayhawks a little bit. You're right about winning plays. And I think it was you who said it. It was a 2-point game, like 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left. You said this game needs a jolt. KU needs a spark. McCullough gave him that spark on those 2 separate occasions that you talked about. One was the block on O'Banner. That led to, I think they got 3 stops in a row after that. Fortunately, they couldn't convert on the other end. But the other thing was the will and the desire and the knack for being in the right place at the right time that led him to be able to get that offensive rebound, stick it back up and in, and move that lead back to 3 points. I know a lot of people will say, man, KU didn't play great at home, their final 2 home games. They had to hang on for dear life against 2 teams in the bottom half of the league. And that's true. But look back at last year and how KU went into the end of the regular season. Look back at last year's senior day when they barely beat TCU. When Ochai Agbaji, I don't believe, made a field goal in that game.
Yeah, he was terrible in that game. The best moment of that game before the actual win, Jalen Coleman Lands, of all people, hit a 3-pointer that came 1/10 of a second after the buzzer. That would have been one of the greatest shots in the history of the old barn, but it didn't count, unfortunately. That game was extremely stressful and terribly played. Like, you had a first-team All-American look like it was his worst game of the entire year.
And if you want to draw the parallel, last night, that was kind of what it was for Grady Dick, where he couldn't get anything going on offense, leaving a lot short. But when it came time to make his free throws, he made 4 big free throws down the stretch, which I think says a lot about his mental toughness, that he could stand in and make the shots he needed to make when his team needed them, even if he was having a rough night in the flow of the offense. But yeah, in an 18-game sampling in this league, they are not all going to come easily. You are going to have to scratch and claw, whether it be at home or on the road. You are going to have to dig some games out of the mud. And that was one of those games for Kansas. I don't know. When we talked to Michael Swain yesterday on Jayhawk Weekly, Michael Swain of Fog.net, he said that he felt like the West Virginia game, it was a bit of an energy disparity, that KU just didn't have the same juice that it had for the better part of the season. I don't necessarily think that KU came out flat last night. I think what you saw was a Texas Tech team playing desperate and equipped in some unique ways to make life a little bit more difficult for Kansas than some other teams are able to. Able to play with two bigs, able to get downhill and play good pick and roll stuff, able to protect the rim. They made the game hard on Kansas in a way that I think they deserve some credit for. But Kansas, like you said, they made the winning plays. Kevin McCullough made the winning plays. Man, where would this KU team be without that guy?
He's awesome. Like, you can tell, I was telling Fulton this during crosstalk on Mic'd Up earlier. You can see in games like that one, in games like against West Virginia, really most of the games over the last month, why Bill Self, as far back as Big 12 Media Day in October, talked about how this guy was the perfect fit for this roster, that KU knew as soon as they saw that he had entered the transfer portal, we've got to get this guy. This is what we need offensively, defensively, leadership-wise. We've got to have this guy. It's kind of funny that McCullough is not, I don't know how I want to phrase this, but there are games where it looks like, man, he is completely just out of his element. The first game against Texas Tech, in fact, down in Lubbock.
That was one you have to figure the environment and the vitriol in that building directed at him specifically. That's a unique situation. There aren't a lot of guys that are ever going to play in a game like that, where you transfer from one conference rival to another. You've been an important part of that conference rival's team, and then you transfer to another place. That was a pretty unique circumstance, and McCullough would probably be the first to say he didn't handle it well, that it shook him up a little bit.
For sure. But then in the final 2 minutes, remember, he hit that jump shot middle of the lane. That helped extend the KU lead and helped them hold on. That was, I think, the first example of, winning time McCullough this season, and he has continued to do that. The TCU game down in Fort Worth a couple Mondays ago, that's the number one example of how that has really come to a head at the end of this season. His ability to step up in the big moments, no matter how he played for the first 35 minutes, in those final 5, you can trust him to go make a play. That's extremely valuable for this team in particular. When we get to the Big 12 tournament, when we get to the NCAA tournament, when you say, hey, look, we need someone to go make a play. It doesn't have to be Jalen Wilson. If it ain't you, we ain't winning, and we are going home, so you got to go do something. You're at a point now, if you're KU, you don't have to rely just on Jalen Wilson. You can say, hey, we trust that Kevin McCullough is going to do something special to help us win. We can trust that DeJuan Harris, who's completely overlooked because it was senior night, McCullough had the big plays, Wilson, obviously, his final game at Allen Fieldhouse, you had these other moments. DeJuan Harris was awesome. Again, 5 assists, 16 points. I think he only had 1 turnover for the game. He's been incredible. We trust that that guy can go make a winning play for us. The fact that KU's got multiple guys in that category got to be extremely encouraging at this point. This morning and early into this afternoon, there have been a couple different bracketology websites or bracketologists, from the guys that you know to guys who I know because I spend a lot of time every single day as we prep for the show looking at various websites and bracketology posts about where do they have KU, K-State, the rest of the Big 12, etc. With the win last night, Joe Lenardi of ESPN, who's not the best at it, but he's the biggest name, that's the most accessible one, he has moved Kansas up to being in the Midwest in the NCAA tournament, in the Midwest Regional, the number 2 overall seed. So essentially, they would get geographic preference. Jerry Palm is not at CBS as of yet, but Andy Katz at NCAA.com, he has them there. Again, he's not the best at doing that, but 2 major media outlets saying, oh yeah, they're getting moved up, feels like a pretty good omen. And then DJ Bauer, who we talked about the other week, who's one of the best online at doing bracketology for a living, he also has KU now in the Midwest. Which makes me think that was one of their ugliest wins of the season. Did they really deserve to get bumped up after that one? But hey, when you win the Big 12 championship in the hardest year it's ever been, you deserve to get plaudits for that. And also just factoring in the other teams that are going to be ones. KU's ahead of Purdue at this point. Purdue has had so many losses that are kind of, they deserve to have been knocked down to the last number 1 seed. Alabama has a worse loss than any of the KU loss. Like, KU losing big at home to TCU, that's bad, but TCU is a good team. Oklahoma is not, at least relative to most power conference teams, and they smoked Alabama.
Yeah.
That is such an egregious loss. That should be a major demerit against them. And Houston does not play anybody. They are the number 1 team in a lot of the advanced metrics. They have the second worst strength of schedule, in the top 40 in the country over at KenPom. Only Florida Atlantic has a worse one. Come on. KU deserves to be above at least one of those 2 teams, probably Houston.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They played nobody. They got to play Tulsa. Tulsa is horrific.
Yeah, they're really bad.
A lot of those American teams are not good. Remember a couple years ago, it was 2021, when Wichita State won a share of the league and was a play-in team.
Yeah, went to Dayton. They sent them to Dayton. And they lost to Joe Yesufu and Drake.
There they did. That was the game that got KU thinking, we could use that guy.
Yeah.
Now he's a national champion. We'll talk some more college basketball later on in the show. Plenty to preview with K-State coming up tonight as they take on Oklahoma. Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk about that game. Right now, though, after a quick commercial break, we will come back and play One Gotta Go on 580 Sports Talk.
Well, gotta go.
Quick round of One Gotta Go coming your way here on 580 Sports Talk before we get to our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week from the Washburn girls wrestling team. All right, I'm going to give you 4 cities. I don't believe I've asked this one before. 4 cities. They're the 4 regional host cities for the NCAA tournament. You get Kansas City, Louisville, New York City, and Las Vegas. One's got to go. You can't go party in one of them. Where's it going to go? Or which one's going to go?
Read me the 4 again.
You get Kansas City in the Midwest, Louisville in the South, New York in the East, and Las Vegas in the West.
You know, I'm not a Vegas person.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be the one I actually get rid of. I mean, obviously, like, for parties, for nightlife, for a scene, the answer is probably either Kansas City or Louisville. I've never been to Louisville like that, so I would probably eliminate Louisville just off, like, I know you have a good time in Kansas City. I know where to go to have a good time in Kansas City. New York easily stays on the list. You feel like you're in the center of the universe when you're in New York, especially when there's a big event happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not a Vegas guy. That's just, that scene doesn't appeal to me in any real form or fashion. So, I would say Vegas has to go.
I think I'm keeping Vegas. And I'm not a Vegas guy. Like, I'm not a go to the club guy. I'm not a sit at the slots for 14 hours. I mean, that's just not.
Right.
I don't really want to sit at a table all day. I mean, that's just not my thing. But the idea of going to a sick restaurant, having a big old steak, and then sitting at a sports book watching games for 8 hours, that does intrigue me at least a little bit. I at least have some intrigue in that. And also Carrie Underwood's had a residency there before, so maybe she's in town.
I did not know that.
Maybe I'll swing by. I like Louisville. I've been there for the NCAA tournament before, back in 2016. I had a really good time in Louisville. Underrated city. I would keep that on the list. Part of me almost says take out Kansas City because I know it. Like, I can go to Kansas City tonight if I wanted.
Right.
So I think
you just rather experience something you don't often get to experience.
And New York, I mean, you're right. I mean, I've been in New York for a handful of long weekends, never a super extended period of time. I've never gone to a game at Madison Square Garden. That feels like something I've kind of missed out on.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, you are the center of the sports world at that point. So I think I would take Kansas City off, not as an anti-KC thing, but I can go to Kansas City anytime. I go to Power and Light whenever I want.
That's true. But it is a great basketball scene.
It is. That's true.
You can go get barbecue afterward.
Real quick, speaking of barbecue in Kansas City and basketball, coming up in headlines, we're going to talk about the menu being served, the school-themed menu at the Big 12 tournament this year. It is preposterous.
We're actually going to talk about that right now.
Oh, yes. Let's go.
This is my one gotta go.
Yes.
The Big 12 and Levy restaurants, this is straight from a press release, will be introducing Big 12 Eats at T-Mobile Center this year, a foodie-focused menu of items that will satisfy the palate of fans from every team. So I've got 4 entrees here, including the ones that represent the home state schools. We've got your Jayhawk mac and cheese, which is pasta and creamy white cheese sauce, topped with house-smoked pulled pork, Levy signature barbecue sauce, and crispy fried onions. The K-State Wabash Cannon Dog. I didn't make these up, guys. This is from the press release.
That's very funny.
It's a bacon-wrapped jumbo hot dog topped with Wildcat purple relish. Also, we have the Tech Masked Rider Burger, an all-beef patty, cheddar, fried onion rings, sweet pickled jalapenos, and Red Raider barbecue sauce. And the Cyclone Tenderloin, the Kaiser bun, breaded pork tenderloin, sliced onion, and sweet and spicy pickles. One of those has to go.
I've got to get rid of the Wabash Cannon Dog. And in theory, it sounds good. Like bacon-wrapped jumbo hot dog, hell yeah. The purple's going to throw me off. Like, what is this purple thing that I'm eating? That would make me uncomfortable.
Man, I have to order no relish. I know, like, the purple flourish is what makes it K-State, but I don't like relish. I don't like relish if it's green. No, thank you. I'm a hard no on relish. I'm a hard no on all things pickle. People who know me know this. Yeah, that's true.
You are anti-pickle. I like green relish. I'll even eat the ballpark neon green relish that looks like it came straight out of, like, the Green Lantern's suit. Like, oh my God, what is this color?
Right.
I'll eat that, but purple relish on it would make me feel weird. The Jayhawks mac and cheese, when I first was reading that, I thought they were just describing the 23rd Street Brewery Bill Self.
I did too.
And I was like, creamy pasta and creamy white cheese sauce. I thought, oh, damn, I love the Bill Self. But then it was pork and fried onions. I still think that sounds pretty good.
We have a voter from the Big O Tires text line from the 785 who said, my kids eat too much mac and cheese. I'm sick of it. So get rid of the mac and cheese.
Okay, that's fair. Was that Jake? Was that Jake who texted in?
That might have been.
I know his son's a big mac and cheese fan. The funniest part about this menu to me is that some of the names are like fun, like Tex Masked Rider Burger. That's awesome. The Stormin from Norman, Oklahoma taco, fun name. Then you just get Jayhawks mac and cheese. Wabash Cannon Dog, also good.
Yes, Wabash Cannon Dog is the best name by far.
TCU Loaded Tots. Like, does Fort Worth not have anything cool that could be thrown into a potato-related name?
They could have called them like the Funky Tots. Funky Town Tots.
Perfect. Call Brett Yormark.
The funniest one on here, though, is definitely the Baylor Float, which is a Dr. Pepper ice cream float. Dr. Pepper float. That's so perfect.
That really is good. Oh, man, that's funny. What's your pick, by the way?
The one that has to go there, I'm not a big pork tenderloin guy, so I gotta say, yeah.
Oh, man, I love good pork tenderloin.
Like, of the four, that's my least favorite of the four.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I think most of these actually sound pretty decent.
No, I'd eat every single one of these. Don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm saying one has to go, I'm saying one has to go. I would eat every single one of these. And you know what? If I'm at the T-Mobile Center next weekend, I just might try them all.
You really should. The West Virginia Mountaineer Roll, sliced pepperoni and mozzarella cheese in a soft roll. So that's like a pizza runza, right? With no cabbage.
Yeah, like just like a pepperoni roll.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, like they had an Old Chicago or a place like that.
These all sound delicious.
Yeah.
The Big 12 is actually becoming like cool.
Yeah, they got a bathing ape is
I
back.
know.
We got
Bape collection is
we're
back.
Gonna have a Jayhawk and a Wildcat Bape collection.
If it wasn't like $250 for a t-shirt, I might buy one.
For real.
We'll get to a quick timeout. Our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week are next on 580 Sports Talk. time for our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week here on 580 Sports Talk. It's a state championship edition of our Athletes of the Week. We're headed to Washburn Rural High School, where the Junior Blues, for the third time in 4 years, champions of the state of Kansas in girls wrestling. And to talk all about their championship season, we're joined by Damon Parker, the head coach of the Junior Blues. They have been on an unbelievable tear ever since girls wrestling became a sanctioned CASA sport just a few years ago. So we got to talk to Damon all about this season, what made this particular group special, what the moment was like when they ended up winning the state crown, and so much more. I had a blast putting together this conversation with Damon today. I hope you enjoyed as well. So without further ado, our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week, the Washburn Rural Girls Wrestling Team, and our conversation with head coach Damon Parker. Our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week for this first Wednesday in the month of March are state champions for the third time in just 4 years. It is the Washburn Rural Girls Wrestling Team, which won the team championship down at Hartman Arena in South Central Kansas this past weekend. The third time in 4 years that the Junior Blues have brought home that crown. And to talk all about this season, all about this championship, we welcome in the head coach of the Junior Blues. That is Damon Parker. And Damon, we've gotten pretty familiar with doing these conversations over the last few years, so I'll just leave it big picture to start things off. What is it like to hear that you've been the head coach and that your program has now won 3 state championships in the last 4 seasons?
Man, we're blessed. We're very grateful, and I'm, like seeing your phone number pop up on the call ID is always a good thing. I mean, something good has happened. So, we're very fortunate that we've got a super supportive community around our wrestling program and super supportive administration, and they put us in a position to be successful.
This year in particular, and we'll talk about some of the athletes and some of the wrestlers specifically in just a moment, but the way it finished this year, a little bit different. Nobody from Washburn Rural in one of the championship matches, and yet still, by the end of one of the third place matches, you guys knew that you were going to win the state championship. What was that like? How different was that from years past when maybe there was an individual or two who were competing for individual titles to already know by the end of the day, hey, we've got this wrapped up?
Well, it's kind of a strange situation because we're not on the girls' side, but on the boys' side, when I was coaching the boys, we had years where we didn't put anybody in the finals, but we weren't in the conversation as far as bringing home a trophy from the state tournament. So this year was a unique experience, but at the same time, it's like it's amazing to me how many people, including who you would think would have a trained eye, look at the results at the end of the first day and think that your team's out of the running. Like, I had a lot of coaches come up to me and not really try to give me a consolation, but say, well, man, better luck next year, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, man, this is the end of the first quarter. We're not even close to finished yet. And I went back to the hotel that night and worked my way through the brackets, worked through the scoring, and just kind of called a team meeting. And I was like, look, all your goals are still there. And we did not go into that tournament with the goal of winning state. I think the easiest way to win a state championship is stop talking about winning state championships. It's about scoring the next point. And in each individual match, you got to break it down to the most minute level that you can. And so that's what we told our girls in the hotel on Wednesday night was, look, don't worry about that 29-point deficit. Instead, worry about scoring the next point in your next match. And regardless of the situation, if you're focused on scoring the next point, things generally work out in our favor. And, I didn't let them know the night before that second day of competition. I didn't tell them that they were going to win a state championship. But looking at the brackets, I knew the way the math was going to work out. If we wrestled the way that I knew that our girls were capable of wrestling, I knew that we were going to bring it home, even though we didn't have anybody in the finals. And they did a good job of living up to our high expectations for them.
We're chatting with Damon Parker, the head coach of Washburn Rural Girls Wrestling. The Junior Blues are our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week after picking up their 3rd state championship as a team over the past 4 seasons. Obviously an incredible accomplishment. And the mindset, Damon, of your group going into this year. You mentioned that you weren't talking once you got to state about winning the state championship. It was just a point-by-point kind of view of the competition. But for your girls and for the wrestlers who have been there now for 4 years, your senior class, or even wrestlers who have been there for a number of years at this point, what was their mindset going into postseason matches, going into state just in general? Did it feel like business as usual for them?
Well, I don't know if it's business as usual because it doesn't matter how good of a wrestler you are, you still have the same nerves as everybody else. And we went into it with the mindset. Well, it's hard for me to say what's going on between a kid's ears, but I can tell you what we preached to them and what we were hoping was their mindset. And that was just being grateful for the opportunity. Like, our varsity lineup only had 2 seniors in it. We're a very young team. And so for those kids, especially Alexis and Addie, it was, this is your last run at this thing. Like, just don't have any self-doubt when it's done. Like, you go out there and you go 0-2, but you leave everything out there that you possibly can. Like, you don't have to look back on your career with any kind of regret or self-doubt. And neither one of those kids is in that position right now. They both did absolutely everything they could to help their team. And with everyone as a whole, we told them that, regardless of the situation, regardless of the score, regardless of the outcome the last time you wrestled this girl, regardless of how much pressure is on that match, expect to win and truly believe you will. And we told them, bold, italicized, all caps, underline that word, truly and truly believe, because and they took that to heart. I can tell you that was part of their mindset, because I went through the brackets and counted, and we had 13 matches during that state tournament where we were behind in the third period and we ended up winning the match, usually by pin. And that just doesn't happen unless you've got that mindset of, who cares what the score is? I expect to win as long as I'm still second win and there's still seconds left on the clock.
The lasting image for me from state wrestling this year, Damon, is a shot at Brian Terrell of the Wyandotte Daily took this, and it's you hoisting Addie Brocksterman in the air after she won her third place match, and just the joy and the excitement, it just emanates through the photo. In that moment when she picked up that win and you knew that it was academic, you guys were going to win the state championship as a team, what was that moment like for you? What was that moment like for her and for the entire team?
Man, that was something that I will remember until the day that I die. It really is. It was one of the most special moments of my entire coaching career. And I told anybody that would listen on Thursday, it's like the wrestling gods just kind of have a way of making things work out. And that we call that the rocket ship, whenever somebody gets lifted up like that. And the rocket ship is reserved for state champions. We do it whenever someone wins a state title. They come over, they get their moment lifted up high for everybody to see. It's kind of the Simba from the Lion King moment, and knowing going into this that we weren't going to have a state champ this year. That was not a premeditated rocket ship thing. It was just like, it was a culmination of 4 years of Addie's hard work, because one thing that kind of gets lost when you're the stud like Addie Brocksterman is, and you're the person that everybody expects to win every time you step out on the mat, the excitement and the pounding on the mat and the crowd going crazy, that kind of diminishes a little bit when you always win, because that's what people expect of you. And it's not a surprise when you win. And so Addie never got to have that moment where the entire place goes absolutely nuts for her. Even when she set the Kansas State record for wins or Kansas State record for pins, I mean, those were golf claps. But then somehow fate put Addie Brocksterman in a position against an opponent that had beaten her the day before, gave her a third period deficit, and she had to find a way to pin that girl. And when she did, we said that rocket ship is reserved for state champions, and it is, and it still is. And Addie is the one that cemented that for us. And that's the kind of thing that they write movies about, man. Like, there's no way that moment will ever be recreated. And she went over to shake hands with the opposing coach. She came back, and like, in that moment when I realized, okay, we're state champs, it's like, no, Addie, you're going up. This isn't going to be a normal high five and a hug. And the roof just blew off the place. And I don't know if everybody knew, other than our coaching staff, that match secured a state title, but I wanted to make sure that Addie knew it in that moment. So that was a pretty special thing. Like I said, something that I'll remember not just for the rest of my career, but for the rest of my life. And I have a feeling that anybody that was there that witnessed it, they'll have the same memory.
Damon Parker is our guest, the head coach of Washburn Rural Girls Wrestling, the state champions in classes 6 and 5A for the third time in 4 years. And the Junior Blues are our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week. And Damon, I wanted to close this just asking about your team in general. Obviously, every championship is a special one at any level. And to win 3 in 4 years, that is a feat that truly no one else has accomplished up until this point in the state of Kansas. What makes this year different? What made this team, what made this championship different than the ones you guys have pulled in the past at Washburn Rural?
I mean, it's so hard to pinpoint one specific thing because like there are so many things that make each team different. They've all got a different makeup. And I think this year, probably the thing that makes us the most different from the other championship years is I think there are probably two things. Number one is the adversity that we faced throughout this year. And number two, this is the best team that I've ever coached, comparable to anybody else in the country, any other boys team or girls team that I've ever coached. Like, relatively speaking, it is the best team that I've ever seen, especially on the girls side. Like, for example, I was looking at the high school national rankings the other day in Bixby, Oklahoma. They won an Oklahoma State championship this year, and this team beat them by 100 points. South Sioux City is ranked number 23 in the country. They won a Nebraska State championship. We beat them by 495.5 points in Council Bluffs. The Waverly team that's ranked number 28, they won the Iowa Team State championship, and our girls beat them by 569 points. And then Dodge City is ranked number 19 in the country, and we just beat them at the state tournament. There's the potential that this might actually be the best girls wrestling team in the United States right now. And I think the reason for that is we don't have the star power. We don't have the Fargo national champs and all that kind of stuff. But we got girls that will fight you until there are 0 seconds left on the clock. And we took 10 girls to the state tournament this year, and all 10 of them made it to the second day, and all 10 of them contributed 5 or more points. I've never seen anything like it. It was a true team effort. And we have on the front door of our locker room, we have a sign that says, if you are not prepared to put this team first, then turn around. Like, if you're going to put the individual needs in front of the team needs, then we don't have any use for you. And there's no better example of that than Alexis Fredrickson, our 135 pounder, who spent the first half of the year at 130. And she moved up to 135 knowing two things. That one, it was going to make it a heck of a lot harder for her to win a state championship at 135 than it would have been at 130. And two, it made our team stronger. And she did that, and Alexis placed 6th. And she's now a 3-time state medalist. She finished 5th as a sophomore, 3rd as a junior, and then 6th this year. Her lowest medal, and I caught her before we left the auditorium, and I was like, that medal around your neck is the most important one that you've ever won, because the sacrifice that you made by moving up a weight for our team, you scored 13 points today, and we won the state championship by 12. And if you wouldn't have made that move, then we would have brought home a second place trophy. And that's just a perfect example of the selflessness that this team showed throughout the entire year, and having to sometimes even intentionally put yourself in harm's way, in adversity's way, and still finding a way to overcome. I'll never have another team like this. We're going to win more state championships. We're not done with that. But I can't imagine ever having a team that comes together the way that this one did at the right moments.
What a run it has been for Washburn Rural girls wrestling, and what a year it has been for the Junior Blues as well, picking up a state championship for the 3rd time in just 4 years. The Junior Blues are our Wendy's High School Athletes of the Week, and to talk all about this championship run, the entire 22-23 season, we're joined by Damon Parker, the head coach of the Washburn Rural Junior Blues girls wrestling program. Damon, thank you so much for taking the time for us. We really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you about your state champions this year. Congratulations and best of luck on the offseason and the start of another defense of a title coming up next year.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate the coverage. Go Blues.
That is Damon Parker, the head coach of Washburn Rural girls wrestling. An unbelievable run for the Junior Blues, 3 state championships in the last 4 years. So congratulations to Washburn Rural on yet another state crown this year. An unbelievable run. That's pretty high praise from head coach to his team. Maybe the best he's ever coached, and maybe the best in the country right now. Hard to argue with the bona fides that he laid out for us. Awesome conversation. I can understand why athletes would run through a wall for Coach Damon Parker. That was a blast to have to chat with him today, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation as well. Right now, we need to get to a break at the top of the hour for our national and local news. We'll talk some Chiefs, NFL, what is wrong with you, and with Tim Fitzgerald next hour right here on 580 Sports Talk.
There's still time for ADI.
Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. 2 more hours coming your way on the show today. Appreciate you listening on 580 WIBW AM, online at 580WIBW.com, where you can find the link to the video stream and the audio feed. And, of course, on YouTube, where we live stream every show. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Appreciate all you guys for jumping in today. If you've missed any of the show up until this point, head on over to our website, 580WIBW.com. Hover your cursor over the podcasts tab right in the middle of the page. A menu will pop up. Click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you will find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. Coming up here in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we are going to get to some Kansas City Chiefs offseason roster notes, what positions do or do not need to be addressed this year. We've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the month, and Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com is going to join us for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. And, of course, we're taking your texts on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, and your comments in the YouTube comment section. Sports on 580 WIBW is where you can find that. But, Dan, before we get to the Kansas City Chiefs and the NFL offseason, we've got some breaking news from the Big 12.
Yeah, we do.
Caleb Grill out at Iowa State. That is right. The guy who was with TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State originally, left with him to UNLV, and then came back to Iowa State with him, the Maize native. He has been kicked off the team. Here's the official statement from TJ Otzelberger and from Iowa State. This is a press release from the program. Senior guard Caleb Grill is no longer with the Iowa State men's basketball team due to a failure to meet the program's expectations. Quote, we hold our players to high standards, and there are expectations that our student athletes are held accountable for, Iowa State's men's basketball coach TJ Otzelberger said. Grill appeared in 25 games with 22 starts this season, 9.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. This isn't going to completely change what the season outlook looks like, I think, for Iowa State. They have been crumbling ever since they played KU and beat them up in Ames a few weeks back. But this is just another chapter in one of the worst books ever written over the course of an Iowa State season. They've been falling apart. Grill has been a disappointment. They've really needed more than 9 points per game out of the guy for someone who started 22 games this year as a shooter, at least intended to be a shooter.
Yeah, he dealt with some injuries, to be fair. He wasn't quite 100% for the better part of this season. But, yeah, there's a long relationship there with Otzelberger because Otzelberger was where? He was at South Dakota State or North Dakota State? He was at one of those Summit League schools, wasn't he?
I think it was South Dakota State.
I think you're right. And they recruited Caleb Grill. Otzelberger recruited Caleb Grill really heavily out of Mays High. And Grill took the Iowa State offer because that was the biggest offer he got. He was there for a year, and then he transferred to UNLV because that's where Otzelberger ended up after he was at that was the first jump forward Otzelberger made in the coaching ranks. So he was there with Otzelberger for a year, and then when Otzelberger left for Iowa State, Grill went back to Iowa State. So obviously there's a lot of fondness between Grill and his coach, or at least seemed to be on the surface that he would, cross the country to choose to play for him not once but twice, and even return to a place he'd previously transferred from to play for this coach. And that it's the same coach dismissing that player from the team with one line in a press release with one game left in the regular season. That's tough. That's tough. Makes you wonder. I mean, obviously there's more to the story, and whether we hear it or not, I mean, shouldn't matter either way. What's done is done. But yeah, this just adds another layer to what has been a really disappointing February and a kind of shocking tumble from Iowa State here these last 3 weeks.
I was not expecting that. I'm going to have to do some message board diving here in the next couple of hours because I'm very curious as to what happened. I didn't know there was discontent with him, but been a rough stretch for Iowa State. I don't think there's any denying of that. We'll get to that more. We'll revisit that coming up during headlines next hour. Right now, though, I did want to touch on something regarding the Kansas City Chiefs, and I saw this from Arrowhead Pride earlier today. Positions where the Chiefs do not have a significant need this offseason. And I think the word significant is doing a lot of work here. So I'm going to just look at this in terms of positions that this one particular website do not need to be addressed. We know the obvious ones that are needs for the Chiefs. They've got to solidify the wide receiver group. They've got to figure out their long-term plan on the edge. Is Frank Clark going to be back? Who's going to replace him, etc. Offensive tackle, they've got to solve that problem. And then running back, you probably want to stabilize that room. Safety, too. Can't forget safety. So this post over at Arrowhead Pride lists interior offensive line as a position. Hey, you don't need any help here. This is not something where you have a quote-unquote significant need. You're fine. And for the most part, I agree. I think you've got to make sure you've got your depth in place, but as long as that's figured out, yeah, you've got the best interior offensive line in football with Tooney, Humphrey, and Smith. No worries there. I am in full agreement. The next position, linebacker. Hard to argue with that, to be completely honest. You've got three very solid starting or top of rotation linebackers. Nick Bolton, number 2 tackler in the NFL this year, set the Chiefs single season record. Willie Gay maybe hasn't quite taken off to the degree that we thought he possibly could, but he has been very solid. I thought he played very well in the Super Bowl. And then he drafted Leo Chanel last year, who played a lot in the Super Bowl, actually. Super athlete, developed well. They like what he can do for this team, kind of a jack of all trades, front 7 player. Those are your top 3 guys. What do you need after that? Darius Harris, bring him back. He's a restricted free agent. Bring him back on a 1-year tender. Boom, you've got your entire linebacker core already set up. So I even agree there more than I do with the offensive line, that you might need some depth at the one. The other one, you're pretty much set already. That's where my tune changes a little bit with this piece. They also mentioned at the end, specialists and quarterback. We know the Chiefs need to figure out their backup. It's probably Shane Buechele. Okay, we can move on. Specialists, nothing's changing. James Winchester will be with the Chiefs until he decides to retire. Tommy Townsend ain't going anywhere. Harrison Butker probably not going anywhere, but I wonder if he might get restructured this year.
You hear how he has spent his offseason so far?
No, I've not.
I got to make sure this is actually true, but I heard something along the lines of he spent a week at like an abbey in California, like meditating. I got to look this up.
That's fascinating. Meditating on, should I agree to take this structure or what?
So first week of Lent, he decided to spend that time in silence, reflection, and prayer at St. Michael's Abbey, southeast of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So
I help him find what he's looking for.
A little more normal than a darkness retreat, that's for sure.
I'm sorry to really take this off the rails. Did you see any of the quotes from Aaron Rodgers' post-retreat interview on a podcast that he did about his getting in touch with his inner self?
Drug test him immediately is my reaction.
He was talking about his poops, and it just was so unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wanted to hear this.
No.
But more power to you. So I don't think anything's going to change with those groups either. But the two that I definitely would have a disagreement with personally, and I'm curious your thought on this, they've got cornerback and tight end both listed here. I'm high on their cornerback group. L'Jarius Sneed, he's got 1 more year in his contract. I assume they will probably extend him at some point. Jalen Watson had a great rookie year. Trent McDuffie was your number 1 overall pick, or your first of first-round picks last year. He's not going anywhere. And you also, why am I playing on Joshua Williams? He, I thought, showed flashes. And if that's your CB4, you're in a really good spot. Here's where I would disagree with, if you're saying there's not a significant need, okay, fine. We can argue semantics about what you mean by significant in that case, and the writer from this Arrowhead Pride piece. I would not be completely opposed to taking a flyer on a guy, even if it's a late round pick. The Chiefs have a ton of picks. If they end up taking more than the average 7, I would not be opposed at all. Even if they just have 7 after a couple trades, if they spent a day 3 pick on some depth at cornerback. And the reason why is because that position, maybe more than any other in football, and especially for young players, is extremely volatile. You can look great one year, awful the next. You can go in reverse. You may not look like you're much of anything at first, and then all of a sudden it just clicks, and boom, there you go, you're off and running. An example of the volatility of this spot, I look to my personal favorite team, the Green Bay Packers, and Eric Stokes. Stokes is a rookie 2 seasons ago now, was really darn good. He was one of the better CB2s in the entire NFL as a rookie. Last year, before he got hurt, he was awful. He was getting cooked with regularity up and down the field, just lost his touch. I'm not sure what happened, but all of a sudden he went from mega promising to, that this isn't looking good at all. So I'm not saying I'm suddenly down on Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Trent McDuffie, etc. I'm just saying that it's a highly volatile position. Maybe you do look at adding at least a little bit of depth if there's a player you really like, after pick 150 or so, because there is the risk that some of these young guys might fall off the cliff. That does happen. The other position here is tight end. You have to ask yourself, is Noah Gray good enough to be tight end 2 for a team that does like to run and has increasingly showed when they've been healthy an interest in running multi-tight end sets? Blake Bell was inactive in the Super Bowl. Probably done for the Belldozer in Kansas City, I would assume. I think he's a free agent.
I think that's right.
I would assume he's probably not coming back. Jody Fortson, coming off of a major injury. He did play at the end of the year, but what is Jody Fortson? Is he a guy who can play 20-ish snaps a game and can be a legitimate tight end number 2, or is he mostly just a red zone weapon? What is Noah Gray? Do you feel like you are comfortable saying, this is tight end 2, we want to run more 12 personnel sets, and we can do that with both Kelsey and Gray on the field? Or if we do have to sit Kelsey more and more because he is getting older, he's getting banged up, he's a physical player, we got to go with more Noah Gray out there. Do you feel comfortable with that? I'm not saying you need to go find a superstar tight end number 2. You don't have to go get a great player to be your secondary option. I'm just saying, do you feel completely comfortable with Noah Gray being at that role, given what his development has looked like? If so, okay, fine. You're probably okay there. You might only keep 3 on the roster since you also have a fullback. If you're not 100% sold on it, again, I could see a day 3 pick, round 4 or after, or maybe you say, hey, let's take a flyer on someone who's mega athletic, but maybe hasn't put it together yet. We think we can mold that guy. So I think I partially agree with this, but I wouldn't go as far as to say, hey, look, you definitely don't need to address these positions. I would at least be intrigued, or you could intrigue me if you said, yeah, we're going to go after X corner or X tight end.
So I looked this up. Noah Gray played 52% of the offensive snaps for the Chiefs this last season. So that tells you that...
Really? That high?
Yeah.
Wow.
52% of the offensive snaps, 597 snaps. Started 8 of the 17 games, too, as the Chiefs would occasionally come out in 2 tight end sets. I know that doesn't mean a lot, but still. 52% of the snaps. Gray on the year, his total numbers, in case people don't know them off the top of their heads, 28 catches, 299 yards, and touchdown. Also had a touchdown run on a quarterback sneak.
Also has type 1 diabetes, so a plus there.
Yes. Clearly, TE2 is a position that has a level of importance in the Kansas City offense. And I think it will increase in its importance as Travis Kelce advances into his mid-30s. Like, Travis Kelce's 33. Like, what he's doing is remarkable.
Yeah.
And he seems like the kind of guy who can do this well into his 30s. A lot of great tight ends have. And Kelce's a guy who just really might be built different. And I'm not trying to write Travis Kelce off. I'm not trying to ship him out of town. I'm not trying to call him yesterday's news. But I am intrigued by the thought of drafting an understudy for him. I am intrigued by the thought of drafting somebody who is a receiving tight end who might be able to learn some tricks of the trade so that you can maybe take a little bit of the load off of Travis Kelce, who played, let me do the Googles on this. Travis Kelce played 80% of the offensive snaps this last year. That's a number, by the way, that has decreased steadily from its peak. In 2018, he played 95% of the snaps. Since then, 95, 93, 86, 82, 80. obviously, as a guy ages, you got to manage his time on the field, manage his snap count a little bit. So if his snap count goes down again next year, 75, 77, 78 range percent of snaps, then it's going to be important to have a true receiving threat at that tight end spot. I don't know that Jody Fortson is that. Like, I like him in the red zone, but that's all we've really gotten to see of Jody Fortson. If the Chiefs really fancy Fortson and really, really like him as a full-time receiver and think that he can continue to develop in that mold, then maybe you can argue me off of this point. But I am intrigued by the idea of taking a long look at tight end and seeing if you can't find an interesting value at that position on the second day of the draft.
So this position in particular has been considered by a lot of draft folks. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. I have seen this from a lot of people who cover the draft specifically. And one of those players includes Daniel Jeremiah at NFL Network. I think this is one of the best tight end classes in a long time. Just so much talent, different kinds of talent, inline players, big receivers, essentially, etc. How high would you be willing to go to get that understudy? Like, does that feel like a pick where you say, hey, look, if there's a guy in the third round, we might have some other holes, but there's just too much value. We have to go get him. Let's do it. Or is that more of a, nah, it's got to be day 3. We need to address bigger holes earlier on?
So the guy I love at tight end is Dalton Kincaid out of Utah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think everybody loves him.
He's even getting some first-round buzz now.
Like, if he were available when the Chiefs picked in the second round, I would do it. Like, I don't think he's going to last that long.
Yeah.
Potentially. But that's something that if he were sitting there, because, I mean, as much as the Chiefs run 2 tight end stuff, I really think there could be a lot of value in adding another young tight end to this mix, somebody who's a real viable, like that underneath middle of the field weapon, especially if you don't bring Juju back.
Yeah.
And Dalton Kincaid is that guy. Like, I love Dalton Kincaid. Like,
awesome player.
Like, I don't think the Chiefs are going to draft a tight end in the first round, but if they drafted Dalton Kincaid number 31, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, would that be addressing something that's not as pressing a need as other needs they might have? Yeah, it would be like when they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire 32nd overall, where that wasn't the position of need, but this was a player that they really liked and felt like could be a really, really good fit. Unfortunately, due to injuries and other reasons, it hasn't worked out for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But yeah, you could sell me on a tight end at the end of round 1. You really honestly could. But that feels more like a day 2 or early day 3 to me, if there is one of those receiver type tight ends who can learn at the feet of the best to ever do it.
If you're going with that angle, we want someone who can be an understudy, it might be a little rich for some folks' blood, but if he's there, middle-ish, end-ish of the third round, Sam Laporta from Iowa feels like what would be a great move for me. Iowa tight ends, that's the cheat code. That is the meta if you're building an offense in the NFL. They're all awesome. They are all so good and have been for so long. That's the guy I think I would have some interest in. He's huge. He's got good speed. Pro Football Focus describes his play style as yak weapon. What is Travis Kelce better than any other tight end? Well, a lot of things. But in that regard, he's incredible after the catch.
Yeah.
Who was it who described him as it looks like he's always surfing as he runs?
I think it was Danny Kelly from The Ringer.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, he said Travis Kelce runs like he's pretending to be surfing.
He looks like he's Funky Kong. Like, that's seriously how he runs. But it works, and he's incredible at it. Similar kind of build. 6'4", 249 pounds. That's a player I think is really interesting. I've got the PFF description of him right up here. It says the detractors would say his problem is he doesn't separate all that well. Well, if you want someone who can be an understudy and learn from the best, why not learn from a tight end who is incredible at finding separation? And even though every defense knows that's target number 1, he still finds a way to get open. That sounds like a pretty good understudy kind of player to me. So that would be my, if he's there, you go make it happen kind of pick. And honestly, the Chiefs are going to pick late in round 3. They've got 2 fourth-round picks. If he's there, pick 80, right? Which is a ways ahead of where the Chiefs are picking. I'd move one of those fourth-rounders, move up in the third, and go get him. I would do it for that kind of player. I don't think I'd take one higher than that because you do at least have enough pieces there for now. But if that one dude was there and you could move up reasonably to get him, I think that's my I don't want to say white whale because I'm not dying to go get him. This isn't 2019 Patrick Peterson that we're talking about here.
Right.
Man, great days in 580 Sports Talk lore. What would they do to get Patrick Peterson? But no, that's the one tight end that I think really piques my interest. Cornerback-wise, do you think the depth is okay there? Are you at all worried that there could be a drop-off? It's just so rare to have 3 rookies who all perform at a high level at that position, which is widely considered the hardest one to adapt to from college to the NFL.
I think if there's a position where the Chiefs have proven they can find and develop value late in day 3 of the draft, it's cornerback. And so it wouldn't shock me if a 7th or a 6th round pick is spent on a corner to provide some depth.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be shocked if that player ended up being a pretty valuable member of the defensive backfield for the next season, because that's just how they seem to be able to spot guys at that spot in the draft who help them at the cornerback position. So, yeah, I'm for that. Like, I could see that being something that they address, again, not till late day 3, but certainly I think something they will address in the draft.
It is incredible the hit rate that this Chiefs front office under Brett Veach has had finding late round corners. It's truly remarkable. We'll talk some more NFL a little bit later on in the show today. Right now, though, after this commercial break, we've got our first March What Is Wrong With You, and then we'll talk to Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com right here on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell? What the hell?
It's about that time. What is wrong with you? Starting off the month of March, we found our monthly champion for February yesterday, the chicken wing embezzler. Well, we've got 2 new stories going head-to-head to open up this month. This is March in What is Wrong with You. Dan, I'll have you go first to kick off the month.
All right, we're going to South Euclid, Ohio. Yes, Ohio, the Florida of the Midwest, where police arrested a man suspected of robbing an Ohio grocery store after his alleged getaway car was trapped at a car wash. The manager at a Giant Eagle grocery store spotted a man leaving with a shopping cart full of nearly $500 in unpaid merchandise last Saturday. She reported the incident to store security, who saw the suspect attempt to get into a potential getaway car. However, officials say the driver of the possible getaway car had gone to a nearby car wash while the suspect was in the Giant Eagle. The car was trapped between several others and couldn't move. Police arrested the suspect, who had an outstanding warrant in South Euclid, and charged him with theft. They also arrested the driver, who had an outstanding warrant with the Lakewood Police Department.
What are y'all doing with outstanding warrants? Jeez.
He said, "All right, my man's gonna rob the grocery store, but I got to get shined up real quick for our getaway. Surely I've got time.
I got to look good while we're doing it." Oh, my God.
His buddy got to be so mad. What are you doing?
You serious?
We
the
could
perfect
get
plan.
We could get a car wash afterwards.
We got all this stuff for free. We can pay for the polish.
Just sitting in an interminably long line at the car wash.
The security video of this is so funny. Dude's just staring right in the camera. You can just see the SUV jammed in between there. Man, that's really funny.
They're grumbling in the front seat. Express my ass.
Oh, man, that's really good. That is tremendous. My story is going to take us to Clearwater, Florida. The Florida of Florida. Do you remember the Whizzinator?
Yeah. Not Mercury Morris.
Ontario Smith.
Yeah, not even close.
Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, he got popped for drugs a couple of times when he played in the NFL. And then he got caught in an airport with a Whizzinator, which is a
prosthetic member. Yeah.
Yeah. And it produces fake urine. He was going to use it to try to fake a drug test. Well, just keep that in mind as we meet 44-year-old Shannon Hunter, who thought she would be able to use a fake urine sample to pass a drug test. Well, as a result of guilty pleas last month to a pair of felony charges, Ms. Hunter was required to provide probation officers in Clearwater, Florida, with a urine sample. Hunter, who recently admitted to possessing painkillers without a prescription and theft counts, knew that her urine was going to run hot. She knew she was going to fail that drug test. So she, quote, attempted to use a prescription pill container full of an unknown liquid to pass her urinalysis. The scheme, which involved her hiding the filled pill bottle inside herself, I will let you imagine what that means, was pretty quickly detected by the probation officials who were familiar with a similar scheme. Usually that container will hold some sort of synthetic urine, similar to that which would come from a Whizzinator. However, Ms. Hunter, after she was caught trying to fake her urine test, admitted it was just soda and tap water in the pill bottle. Not anything that would come even close to passing the test. It was just soda and tap water. Well, court records do not identify the soda that was involved. TheSmokingGun.com believes it was either Sprite or Mountain Dew. It is also unclear why Hunter thought submitting that much of a fake urine sample would actually work.
Good news, ma'am. You didn't test positive for any drugs. Bad news, your sample tested negative for actually being urine.
The bad news is you are filled with, like, new Coke?
Yellow number 5?
Crystal Pepsi? I had someone, here's a fun story for you. I had someone in high school ask me if I would take a urine test for them because they had already been suspended for drugs that year and were going to be again. And he came up to me and he's like, hey, will you pee for me? I was like, hey, dude, I don't exactly know how all the biology works, but you might get results back to tell you you're a diabetic. So I'm not going to do that.
Like the infamous and possibly apocryphal story of the NFL player who tested pregnant on a drug test one time.
Like, how dumb can you? I mean, obviously you're not going to get away with this in the first place, but with pop, like you threw some Sprite and then like a gummy bear in there to get a little yellow color. I don't think that's quite how that works.
We got a great text from the 913 on the Big O Tires text line. I had somebody use a Gatorade bottle under his armpit with a tube running out of the front of a pair of shorts in front of a giant mirror, of which the drug tester is required to watch in person. Imagine squeezing a noisy Gatorade bottle to push out a urine sample.
People will go to any length to try to dodge punishment.
Any length except not doing drugs.
Yeah. What if you just didn't do drugs?
That has been my foolproof plan over the years. I never had to take a drug test, but my foolproof plan over the years for not failing one, if I'm ever subject to one, is just to not do drugs.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had to take one that I remember. I mean, I've had my urine tested before for medical stuff, but never for that. Who you got today? Who's your winner?
Man, the guy was trying to get a car wash while his buddy robbed the grocery store.
Yeah, I think that's the win. That's so funny.
He got in the line, trying to get away, but they got to be like the big sign says, car must be in neutral.
There's a club car wash across town. Come on. Oh, my God. Yeah, that gets my vote, too. That is our winner in the first day of the month for What Is Wrong With You. Let's take a break. Tim Fitzgerald's up next on 580 Sports Talk.
What a great day to be a Wildcat.
It's a big Kansas State victory.
Today's a big K-State victory because we get to talk all things K-State with Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. He's the publisher of GoPowerCat. Check him out for all the best coverage of everything related to the Kansas State Wildcats. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. And, of course, the Wildcat Wrap-Up is brought to you by Azura Credit Union. What's going on, Fitz? How are you?
I'm good. How are you boys?
We're doing well. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for Dan. I'm doing well.
I'm doing well, too, Fitz. Thanks for asking.
Good.
The Kansas State Wildcats, they're playing pretty well right now, Fitz. They had been through a bit of a slump. They had lost 5 out of 7. Looked like they were just kind of slipping, sliding. Who knows if fatigue got to them, the rigors of the Big 12 season, whatever it ended up being. Well, they have turned it around, and they are playing phenomenal ball as of late. 3 wins in a row. They're going for number 4 tonight when they take on Oklahoma. Is there anything you've noticed, Fitz, that has been different over these last 3 games compared to the prior 7?
They played with more energy, more focus. It sounds like Jerome Tang did indeed back off them and practice a little bit. He said something to the effect they have a stretch of the practice session when they go really hard, and then they just really back off from there on out because the guys are tired as the season's worn on. And I think mentally as much as physically. I think, I've talked about this before. This is the first time majority of these guys have been through a season in the Big 12, and it just hits different. I mean, it's just a constant barrage of having to be at the top of your game. You're going to lose. So I think they've kind of settled in. They didn't play as well as they have on, in their last victory, but maybe that was just being on the road. But again, guys, they got to cut down on the turnovers. It's the turnovers that get them into almost negative possessions, and that's bad because they're really efficient on possessions that they don't turn the ball over. So if they cut that down, they not only score more, but they take away opportunities, often in transition for the opposition.
What does it take to cut that out at this part of the year? I mean, that has been the biggest bugaboo for this team throughout the season to this point, is that they play so well when they have a clean game, but when they give it away, they really sputter, they really spiral. We're so late in the year, though, Fitz. I mean, what can be done? What is there to do? Or maybe the better question is, why is it still a problem this late on that they have issues consistently taking care of the ball?
Yeah, they just get a little careless with the ball, and bluntly said, some of these guys aren't real good dribbling the ball. That was, some of their last game at home that I think they had 3 turnovers and just dribbled it off their feet. Just kind of take care of the ball, got to value possessions for. You had Desi Sills pass the ball to, I think, the official at one point in the game. And, that's just, that's not kind of focusing at all. I mean, you got to know where your guys are, and there was no one near where he threw the ball. So it's all mental for me. And sometimes they're trying too hard to make a play. The biggest thing for me, though, is when Marquise Noel starts to get the ball to the hole, you got to make yourselves available, almost like a receiver has to get himself open in football, because this guy will find you. He gets into trouble when he jumps into the air and realizes I got nothing, and often turns the ball over with a bad pass or a bad shot, which doesn't go down as a turnover, but it's really a basket also.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, joining us on the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. We do it every Wednesday here at this time on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz is the publisher at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and you can find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, I thought K-State showed some mental fortitude down the stretch in that game in Stillwater. The game got tight. Jerome Tang got the technical foul that seemed to maybe stir Kansas State up a little bit. They went on a run. They took the lead. And I thought, even with their turnover issues that they have had and even had in that game to the tune of 16 of them, that down the stretch, that pressure situation on the road against a desperate, hungry team really seemed to bring out the best in them. And they made their free throws. Desi Sills made clutch plays. Have you seen this team kind of grow in terms of that fortitude and their ability to close games out down the stretch?
Yeah, and they've got guys that make plays down the stretch. And I know you immediately come to the big two on this team, Noel and Johnson, but Desi Sills finishes so well, so strong around the rim. And they've got a collection of big guys that will finish around the rim when, they end up with the ball in their hands, from a pass. So they've got some real options. You know, it's not like they got to rely on one guy to make the play, and nobody on this team should feel that way, that they have to make the play or they lose. And that's one of the things that's been different about this team is even though they don't play a lot of guys, they're down to an 8-man rotation. They do have a lot of options and some different looks they can put together. So I think they've carved out some roles as we've gone on here. You know, you got Ish Massoud who can step out there and hit a 3-pointer, and they kind of use him, you know, almost like a designated hitter. They bring him in, you know, when they're going to need some offense. So I think it's just all a matter of defining their roles, and also these guys are, you know, there's going to be 6 seniors tonight, 5 on scholarship. So these are guys that have been around the block a little bit, played a lot of basketball, and they know how to finish out a game.
You mentioned it. 6 seniors are going to be honored tonight at Bramlage Coliseum. Nate Aubrey, the walk-on from Manhattan, Tyke Green, Bebe Igiola, Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, and Desi Sills. First things first, do you know if they are doing senior night ceremonies before or after the game?
They do it before at Kansas State. I think it's like 15 minutes before tip-off. But yeah, that's you know, that's something. Let's be honest here. For many years, if you try to hold it after the game, there'd be no one there for it.
That's a fair point. So the other question then, these 6 seniors, and obviously you've got the 2 best players, guys who are very likely first-team all Big 12 players in Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel. You've got role players. You have the local kid in Aubrey. What will you expect the reaction and the reception tonight to be at Bramlage for this senior class as they're honored?
Yeah, really good. You know, for a group of guys, you know, Marquise has been at K-State 2 years, and he's the most experienced of this group in terms of playing for the Wildcats. So it's kind of wild to have that many guys. You know, you think about it, you got 6 seniors and 7 seasons total of playing basketball at Kansas State. So it's, you know, the transfer portal changes things, but I mean, I think it's clear how much the fans, it'll be clear with their sound, that they love Marquise Noel and what he does. And they love Keontae Johnson, and they appreciate everyone else. I think the students will be really fired up because there's a real bond between this program and the student body at Kansas State.
As for the game itself, with Oklahoma coming to town, a team that took the measure of Kansas State and kind of whipped their butts pretty good in the second half in Norman on Valentine's Day, what has to be different in this second meeting for Kansas State? Certainly they'll have an energy from their home crowd, an energy coming off of 3 straight wins, but tangibly, what does Kansas State have to be better at tonight against the Sooners?
Yeah, they just, again, they have to possess the ball. They have to value it. They can't turn it over. They've got to score in transition. And Coach Tang's mentioned this now, you know, that they had slowed down a little bit, and he's trying to get them ramp back up and running. And when this team gets to running, they kind of get into almost a feeding frenzy of just really enjoyable basketball to watch. And they're going to need a spurt like that to get them through this game, to really make it because Oklahoma's good. They might be number 10 in this conference, but we all know how good they are. Just ask Alabama. And it's going to be a tough game, but I think this is one, being at home, K-State will have much better energy, much better focus, and now they've got their eyes on a prize. You know, the season's getting really narrow. You're running out of clock. This is your last home game. I feel like this team's really locked on the horizon right now and trying to, you know, get to some pretty big goals.
We're chatting with Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com here on 580 Sports Tech. It's Sports Talk, excuse me. It is the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. You can find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. You can also go find him and his crew's great work over at GoPowerCat.com as part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Fitz, going into tournament play, when we get to Big 12 tournament play, obviously NCAA tournament after that, and I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this question, but I wanted to ask about Jerome Tang and the confidence in him as a coach in the tournament. And I have no reason to believe. I don't say that as saying, oh, I'm shaky about whether or not he can coach in those do or die situations. I'm really not. But I'm just curious, is there any way to know what his approach is going to be to coaching in postseason games, or if anything's going to change, how he's going to shorten or change the rotation? I mean, is there any way we can know if he's going to handle things differently at all once we get to those do or die games?
No, but he's had so much experience with the tournament with Baylor that you think he would have learned some valuable lessons. And and you look at Baylor, and maybe the entire explanation is they just got better players, but they didn't go very deep in the tournament for many years when they got in. And then all of a sudden, they're going deep and winning a national championship. So it makes me wonder if something else changed behind the scenes that kind of started handling things differently. That's a great question to ask Coach Stang, if he has a philosophy about, how to work the team in that kind of situation. But at the end of the day, I think it's about your guy. Can they prepare themselves? Do they know how to be prepared to, mentally and physically for a game? Yeah. Do you have good guard play? Yeah. Because that's always important. It gets back to the turnovers, valuing the ball, and do you have experience? And they do. Guys, they check a lot of boxes of a team that can move deep into the tournament. And I'm so anxious to see Big 12 teams line up against non-Big 12 teams, because I really feel like the Big 12 might win every first round game they're in, because they're going to be seeded lower than they should be in a lot of cases. And I think we might see 11 seeds in the Big 12 that are going to just take out a 6 with no problem. So I'm really interested to see how this K-State team and this entire conference does once they get out of Kansas City and spread across the nation and start playing some other teams.
K-State does have one other game on the schedule before we talk to Fitz next. That's coming up on Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock tip in Morgantown against West Virginia. That's a West Virginia team that needs wins badly to make sure they can stay on the bubble and hopefully, for their sake, weave their way into the NCAA tournament. Any fear, and I don't even know if it's a letdown spot, Fitz, on Saturday, but is there any worry that, for lack of a better phrase, that could be a letdown spot against a West Virginia team that is going to be as desperate as can be to pick up a win?
Yeah, well, a couple shout-outs here. Shout-out to the Big 12 for having K-State open and close the season with West Virginia. And also to West Virginia for breaking Iowa State, because apparently Caleb Grill's been kicked off the team today. So something's going on in Ames. I'm happy for K-State that West Virginia won in Ames, because maybe that'll take some of the desperation out of the air for West Virginia. But you're right. They're still on the bubble. I mean, I think they still realize they need more, and beating K-State and winning a game in Kansas City, or, certainly they might be getting off the Wednesday bracket if they keep winning. I haven't looked at it that closely, but this is a real opportunity for West Virginia. And, look, guys, if Texas loses and K-State wins out, I believe K-State's going to be the 2 seed in Kansas City. So K-State's got to realize they got an opportunity here to be in a really significant position in terms of how this bracket plays out in Kansas City, because then, you avoid the 6th seed and you move into what might be a struggling Iowa State team or Oklahoma coming out of that game in the 7-10 game if you're the 2 seed. So it can really affect who you play too.
All right, really quick here, Fitz. Last thing I've got for you. On Wednesdays at 3:30, we play a game called One Gotta Go. It's very simple. It's like all those Twitter prompts. We give you 4 topics, and you got to pick one that gets kicked out of the group, all right? So we did today the 4 regional host sites in the NCAA tournament. Which one do you least want to go hang out or party in? You get Kansas City, Louisville, New York City, Las Vegas.
Get New York out of here. I mean, and I got nothing against New York. It's just so expensive, so congested. When you go cover the tournament, you're there to work. You need convenience as much as anything. And there's nothing convenient about New York City, unless we're going to have tents underneath in Madison Square Garden. I don't even know. Is it Barclays? I don't even know what the venue is. But it's just going to be a mess for everyone trying to cover the game, getting around in New York. I think that I would prefer Kansas City because I have friends here, but I probably would prefer Las Vegas too because I have friends there too. So,
our friends in the desert, so to speak.
And Louisville, I got Tyler Griever there. So, I mean, we got someone everywhere. We got it covered.
Louisville's a fun city. I was there for the tournament in 2016. It's a blast. Very underrated city. Now, shout out to our guy, Tyler, formerly of WIBW TV. Tim Fitzgerald works for GoPowerCat.com as part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He's, in fact, the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Head over there for all the best coverage of all things K-State. You can also find Fitz on Twitter at LifeFitz, and he joins us for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up every Wednesday. We appreciate the time, Fitz. We'll talk to you soon.
And I just doomed K-State to the New York bracket. You're welcome.
That is Tim Fitzgerald.
There's something
now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dorzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for stopping by on this Wednesday afternoon, the first day of the month of March. Would you like to give the ultimate Rothsteinism to open up the hour?
This is March.
It is. Best month. Well, one of the best months on the sports calendar. Opening day for baseball at the end of the month.
Yeah.
We've got March Madness and conference tournament weeks. So much good basketball. If you're an NBA fan, that's ramping up.
It's a good golf month. You got Bay Hill and the Players back-to-back weeks.
There you go. Hockey is happening. NHL trade deadline is soon.
Yeah, it is. 2 days, I think.
So if you're a hockey head out there, congratulations, a puck head.
Big move for my Avs today. Acquired Lars Eller from the Washington Capitals for a second-round pick.
Sounds like the Capitals were a Lars seller. Am I right, folks?
They have been a large seller. They're trading a lot of players for draft picks.
Once upon a time, I was a Blackhawks fan, and if I still was, I probably would be pretty broken up about them trading Patrick Kane. But they ruined a kid's life for absolutely no reason, and I gave up any affiliation with them, and now I'm kind of happy that they're going to be irrelevant.
Also, Patrick Kane, not a great guy.
Bad guy. That was always the funny thing about him, not to get into too much of a hockey thing here, but there was always kind of speculation, especially when the Blackhawks first started to exit the dynasty about a half a decade ago, more than that now. And it was, hey, is any other city or franchise going to insulate and protect this possible predator the way the Blackhawks and the city of Chicago did? We're about to find out because he's going to New York.
A lot of cabbies for him to assault New York.
Yeah, possibly a sex pest and definitely
somebody who beat up
on a cabbie.
Yeah, somebody who beat up a cab driver over 20 cents. Yeah, that happened for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Probably not going to go well.
Yeah.
By the way,
Patrick Kane sucks. I hope the Rangers lose their first round playoff series.
Yeah, not a great guy. By the way, did you see, this is another hockey trade that happened this week, Jonathan Quick, who probably was only a big name for a little bit because he played for the Kings when they won a cup in LA, things get blown up.
Won 2, I think.
Yeah, he did win 2. And,
yeah.
He was a great player.
Yeah.
Really, really great goalie. He got traded to the worst team in the league, Columbus, which as far as I'm aware has like 2 wins all season.
They're pretty bad.
They're awful. He got traded for nothing. He got traded for effectively a hockey player to be named later.
Yeah, it's a money deal.
Damn, man, that is a franchise icon. You couldn't do him a little better than that? And I don't even think in hockey they have buyouts like the NBA does.
No.
Where they can just, well, here's $50 buy.
Yeah, it's a different deal.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
It really does.
You got to go from LA to Columbus? Yee. No, thank you. I mean, I don't know that I'd love LA, but I really don't think I'd love Columbus.
This has been 580 Hockey Talk.
This has been Talking Pucks on the Sports Voice of Kansas. We are going to talk plenty of sports news here in just a moment. Our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot coming up in just a second. We will also get to a K-State preview for tonight. We've got some Wednesday night best bets and more. It's all coming up in this final hour of 580 Sports Talk. We would love for you to be a part of the program. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And you can also chime in the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of the channel. Vance wants us to know, by the way, NASCAR is really rolling along in the month of March, too. It is the first full month of the NASCAR season.
That's true. They got some racing going on, I'm sure, this month.
Where is NASCAR going this weekend?
They are at the Pennzoil 400.
How about that?
I don't know where that would be. It looks like Vegas. Vegas.
All right. Sounds like a fun time. I'm sure F1 is doing stuff. I don't follow Formula 1 one bit.
Yeah, I got to get the Bahrain Grand Prix this week.
Heading out to Bahrain. Catch a couple laps. I don't think there's any reason I'd ever go to Bahrain.
Yeah, I don't foresee.
That's on my probably not visiting list.
Not a lot of Instagram models with NYC, LA, Bahrain in their Twitter bios.
No, it's officially the Kingdom of Bahrain. In case you were curious,
sure it is.
Yeah, that's about all I know about Bahrain. Thanks, Wikipedia. So again, if you have any thoughts you want to share with us about anything we're talking about on the show, YouTube comments are open, and so is the Big O Tires text line. All right, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. They are brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. As always, go check them out online at bluedotkansas.com. First one for me. The NFL Players Association today released their first ever team report cards. They did an anonymous survey of players, and they came up with these composite grades for each of the 32 teams in the NFL, and it's broken down into various categories. That includes treatment of families, nutrition, weight room, strength staff, training room, training staff, locker room, and travel. So all those you can pretty much understand. Is our training staff competent? Are they good? Do they make us feel safe? The locker room, does it have amenities? Is it a dugout in a hole in the ground behind our stadium? That's pretty much what Washington's is. Travel, do we have space? Do they charter flights? Do we get to fly first class? Do they bring families along? Etc. Things like that. So let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs and how they grade out on these player team report cards. By the way, the NFL itself has said, hey, dog, you probably didn't need to put us on blast like this. There are other ways you could have handled this, and we have collectively bargained ways you can handle this. The PA, though, pretty much said, I don't care. The Kansas City Chiefs come in really, really, really low. How about 29th out of the 32 teams in the NFL? Only 56% of anonymous player respondents believe that Clark Hunt is willing to invest the money to upgrade their facilities, ranking him 27th in that category. They got a B for how families are treated, a D plus for food service and nutrition, a D plus for training room, D minuses for training staff and locker room.
In fact, their training staff ranked 32nd out of 32.
We'll touch on that momentarily because I think that is very, very interesting. And they got an F for team travel comforts and whatnot. So the training staff, as Dan just mentioned, being ranked 32nd in the NFL, the only one to get a D minus. Responses to the survey called for more things like a, quote, a more welcoming environment. Here's what the NFLPA writes about the Chiefs training staff from this survey. With the lowest rating and concerning qualitative responses, we learned that players' key concerns are with head trainer Rick Burkholder, not the rest of the training staff, which is generally well-liked. Player respondents expressed beliefs and opinions that they feel discouraged from reporting injuries, they do not feel like they get the level of personal care they should, and they fear retribution for speaking up for better care. This is fascinating because, and maybe I'm off on this, but I feel like Rick Burkholder gets talked about as one of the better trainers in the NFL.
Yeah, people around the Chiefs who speak publicly about Rick Burkholder give him a lot of credit. And what do we just come off of in this Super Bowl run? A training staff as a whole that received very high marks for how they were able to get Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce ready to play under adverse injury circumstances. Now, I do think there's an element to all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the Chiefs' responses, not just the responses to Rick Burkholder, but everybody's response to every team. Some guys you just can't ever make happy. Some guys are in a bad situation and they take it out on the trainer. Or they take it out on the PT guys, or they take it out on we don't have first class flights all the time, or whatever it is. And there are some guys who are just going to be bitter. So you can't necessarily take this as gospel, but the fact that this runs counter to Rick Burkholder's reputation outside of the league is interesting, and I think a little bit noteworthy.
I think it's interesting. I don't know how important it is because you're right. I mean, this could be a very easy avenue for bitterness, and who knows? Maybe someone felt wronged by him, and that's why they ended up with that low mark. But I was surprised. I mean, we hear players talk all the time about how positive their interactions are with the team, but I guess things like the locker room or whatever, that's not always talked about nearly as much. Here's the other headline I want to get to. I don't care about the teams that are doing fine. I don't care about, the Buffalo Bills. They got a bunch of A pluses. The Packers, I think, ranked 6th. That was cool. The Las Vegas Raiders. They got A's and A pluses in all but one category. They got a B plus. Mark Davis taking care of his guys. They stink, but they're taken care of. Very similar when Al Davis was there. Players loved Al Davis. Very similar. Minnesota, high marks. I don't care about that. I want to know about the teams that suck. I want to know about the teams that are treating their guys like trash. Take the Arizona Cardinals, for example, which didn't just get Fs, Dan. They got multiple F minuses. The hardest schools in the world don't give you F minuses. Here is from the nutrition and dining part of their breakdown about the Arizona Cardinals. If players would like dinner, it will be boxed up for them, but players reported that the team will charge you via payroll reduction. This is the only club, apparently, that does this. Additionally, players reported that if you work out at the facility after the season is over, the team charges you for every meal eaten at the facility. Again, apparently the only team in the league that does this. I saw someone joke on Twitter, that's why the Bidwill family wants Kyler Murray to train in Arizona instead of his home state of Texas, because then they can recoup some of their money on the meals he eats at the facility. That's whack. You can't let them eat? Come on.
Yeah, like it's like the Oakland A's and Moneyball charging guys for the soda.
Right?
In the clubhouse. How about this sentence from the Arizona report card? Players describe it as a health and safety risk just to walk through the weight room.
Jesus.
The floors are uneven and the floorboards are peeling up. They got an F- in training room and weight room.
That's wild.
The Washington Commanders.
Theirs is very funny.
Dead last. Dead last.
They've got an F and 3 F minuses.
F minuses in training room, locker room, and team travel.
One trend I've noticed, and we'll touch on them specifically in a second. One trend I have noticed, like with Arizona's, they got Fs for training room, weight room, locker room, like things the club is providing, Fs across the board. Staff got a B+ in training staff. Strength staff got an A-. Like, they like the people who are working with them. That's not a problem. But the owners are cheap as hell. But the Bidwills have been cheap as hell since they were in Chicago in, 100 years ago. But yeah, Washington's is very funny how negative it is.
By the way, the Chargers were 30th.
I'm shocked.
Getting an F- in training room. The maintenance for the hot and cold tubs is lacking, with multiple respondents calling them, quote, gross.
Ew. Gross. That's nasty. How about this one? This is from Jacksonville. They're tied for last in support for player families and treatment of families. They are one of 14 teams that don't have a family room in the facility. And because of that, players' wives or players reported that their wives have breastfed their children on the floor of public restrooms in the stadium.
Oh,
that is disgusting.
Vile.
No one should have to do that. That's like third world country stuff. Come on. Give them a room.
The Cincinnati Bengals got an F- in food service / nutrition. They are one of 3 teams in the NFL that does not offer its players dinner, one of only 2 teams to not provide vitamins, and the only team not to provide supplements to its players.
Yeah, Joe, we're going to pay you $55 million a year. You got to DoorDash your food here, though. What is that?
If you want any protein, you're on your own.
That is truly, truly funny. Trying to find some of the others. Yeah, Washington was the only F- for locker room. The Cardinals got an F there. Again, how much is this actually going to change? Probably not a whole lot. I don't think it's going to impact a whole lot in free agency. I mean, guys are going to follow the money more than anything else. But I will say it is very funny to see how terrible some of these teams are. But it's all the usual suspects. We know the Cardinals are cheap. We know the Bengals are cheap. We know the Commanders are a disaster. I just think it's funny to see it in words.
Oh, yeah.
Get F minuses. That's just mean.
Yeah, F- is wild.
Poor janitor found out they got an F- for locker rooms thinking, man, come on. Don't harsh my work like that.
My first Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We are going to the Cactus League, where you just can't kill the Kansas City Royals for the second straight day.
Uh-oh.
Their minor leaguers put together a ferocious come-from-behind ninth-inning rally. I guess yesterday it was a 6-6 tie. They scored 6 in the top of the ninth today, down 6-3. The Royals scored 5 in the top of the ninth, including a steal of home by prospect Samad Taylor in an 8-6 win over the Colorado Rockies. Now, the Royals did not fare as well in the portion of the game in which big leaguers participated, but certainly it was some lesser-known names that contributed to the 5-run rally in the ninth. And a couple of box score highlights from names you do know. Vinny Pasquantino had a hit and a walk in 3 trips to the plate. And Brady Singer made his Cactus League debut, pitched 1 2/3 innings, gave up 2 runs. 1 was earned on 2 hits, walked 1 and struck out 3. Daniel Lynch with 2 scoreless innings, allowed just 2 hits and struck out 1. Carlos Hernandez struck out 4 in a pair of innings in relief, allowed 1 run unearned on 2 hits and a walk. It was not really a game where you had a lot of regulars in the starting lineup. Nicky Lopez, MJ Melendez, Vinny Pasquantino, and maybe Michael Massey were the regulars who were in today's lineup. And then with regards to Singer, he'll get one more tune-up start, and then he'll be off to represent Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. But some promising showings from the young starting pitchers, Lynch and Hernandez, in relief. And another come-from-behind win, the kind of thing that doesn't mean anything until it does. Like, it's not indicative of anything at all until, all of a sudden the Royals are, 10 games over 500 at the All-Star break, and Matt Quatrero's saying things like, we instilled that attitude of competitiveness when we were making all these rallies in spring training. It really started back in the Cactus League. So, anyway, Royals are winners. They are now 5-1 in Cactus League play.
This question is inspired by something Fulton was talking about on Mic'd Up today. Is it out of the realm of possibility that it's a good thing for teams around baseball, but like for the Royals, that Singer is going to miss some time at the World Baseball Classic and it gives a chance for other guys to maybe get some more live reps? Or is the Royals pitching staff so beyond the pale that it really doesn't matter?
No, I think they do need the extra mound time. I think that's probably a positive for everybody. It might be a negative for Singer, depending on how much or how little he gets to pitch.
That's true.
But I think it's a positive for guys who might have a chance to showcase themselves a little more to this coaching staff.
I think live reps are important. I mean, this staff is going to have to figure out who are the guys we can rely on, what does our rotation want to look like, who are our, who's next up if we have to go find someone else to pitch in the rotation, what does the bullpen look like? I imagine it's a positive thing, and a lot of teams throughout baseball are going to have to do that.
Also, the Royals have just announced this transaction. They had talked earlier today about maybe looking to add some outfield depth with injuries early this spring to the likes of Drew Waters. The Royals have signed Jackie Bradley Jr. to a minor league contract with an invite to spring training. Jackie Bradley Jr., Gold Glove winning center fielder, longtime member of the Boston Red Sox, former All-Star. The bat, it's not in evidence anymore. It was never a great hitter, but he at least was passable until the last 2 seasons with Milwaukee, Boston, and Toronto, where the bat has completely fallen off a cliff. But defensively, about as good as it gets, even still in his early 30s, he can still go get it out in center field, and he's going to have a chance to compete for an opening day role with the Royals. Jackie Bradley Jr. I mean, this is hot off the presses. This is as of 2 minutes ago, the Royals tweeted this.
He was a stud defensively for a long. I mean, he still is. He's still as good as anybody. He was a Gold Glover back in 2018. He was an All-Star in 2016. When his bat was good, it was pretty solid. I mean, he had an OPS plus of 119 and 118 back-to-back years in 15 and 16. I think, and he had 1 year, the 2020 year, he had a good bat too, 116 OPS plus, but that year was fake. No stats count from that year.
Strikes out a lot.
Yeah, it just never quite clicked for him offensively. This would have been an even cooler story if Whit Merrifield was still around. They were College World Series teammates at South Carolina.
Yeah,
they were the 2 best players on those teams.
Didn't Merrifield drive in Jackie Bradley Jr. with the World Series winning run?
I believe you were correct about that. Yeah.
I know Merrifield drove it in, but if I remember right, it was Bradley Jr. that scored it. I could be remembering wrong. But yeah, over the last 2 seasons, Jackie Bradley Jr. just a 182 batting average, over 798 plate appearances, 245 on base, 285 slug. So yeah, he's not hitting a lick anymore. But if you're looking for an extra outfielder, a defensive replacement in center field, if you're going to maybe try Kyle Isbell out there, worth a shot. And he was available, and they needed some outfield depth to maybe push some of their young guys. So as good an option as any to try and do that.
Yeah, I mean, there are worse options you could have as a 26th man than a guy who plays truly elite defense. I mean, there's certainly worse that you could do with that. One quick headline I want to get to, Dan, from the NBA world. I love John Morant. He is so fun. I was a big fan of him back in his Murray State days. Number 2 overall pick a few years ago. Superstar. He's got to chill out. You might remember a few weeks ago, we had the story here on the show about he and his crew causing some trouble when they played the Indiana Pacers.
Shining some laser pointers into the Indiana team bus.
You may also remember last year when he threatened to murder someone with hollow point bullets.
Yes.
He's got to chill.
Yes.
So there have been multiple stories that have been reported again today about he and his guys, his crew, menacing essentially and threatening folks, including one story that Ja's mom called him after she had some sort of beef with a worker at the Finish Line at a Memphis mall, the shoe store. And so she called her son, Ja Morant, who then showed up with as many as 9 other people to the mall and started threatening security guards. And then at one point, when the group was told to leave, Ja Morant himself said, "Let me find out what time he gets off." Not sure if that was about a security guard or about the person at the Foot Locker. Ja Morant is out here threatening minimum wage retail workers, man.
And beating up teenagers.
Yeah, another story about him threatening to beat up a 17-year-old, or he did beat up a 17-year-old. No, he did
beat up a 17-year-old. Like, hit him repeatedly with his fists.
Dog, you gotta stop. You've got millions and millions. You're now the face of Powerade, I believe it was just announced recently. You've got a shoe deal. You're a superstar. You can't be beating up teenagers and threatening people at Foot Lockers or Finish Line, excuse me. Not any better. I just wanted to get to that story. That is preposterous. The guard involved in the mall story, by the way, filed a report, quote, because he felt threatened by the statement from Ja Morant. And nobody was arrested there. The quote-unquote disturbing parties left the scene. The NBA has not commented on any of these stories. Dude, you got to chill out. You're an adult at this point. You can't be picking fights like this.
No, you don't need to move like a gangster. Okay,
no.
for lack of a better way to put it. You don't need to move like that. You're rich and you're famous and you play basketball for a living. Cool it with the Tony Soprano nonsense. Cool it with the tough guy act off the court. And definitely don't beat up teenagers. I don't care what they might have done.
The NBA has to do something, right? Like, we're getting player freedom of movement and players feeling confident to speak up about things and, things like that. That is a positive. Players getting their fair share, that is a positive thing that has come out of the player empowerment movement in the NBA. But at some point, Adam Silver's got to step in and say, hey, look, we have a business to run here, right? Like, I don't mean to sound super, the owners are always right, but I feel like it has swung a little bit too far in that direction. That we got a business to run here. We've got a league to run. We can't have one of our biggest growing superstar players fighting kids.
Well, they need an adult in that locker room to sit him down and tell him something. They're a very young team all the way around, and they've kind of embraced, like, they want to be the new bad boy Pistons, right? Like, that's kind of what they want to be. Dylan Brooks, that's kind of how they move. And Memphis, to an extent, embraces that kind of toughness and that kind of rugged play, like, on the court. The grit and grind Grizzlies are a great example of this, and they kind of want to, this group of Grizzlies wants to take that to the next level. But somebody needs to tell Ja Morant, dude, you're going to do this to the wrong person, and that person is going to air you out. Yeah. That person is going to kill you. That is the message that needs to be delivered to Ja Morant. Like, you're going to make the wrong threat to the wrong person on the wrong day, and you are going to end up on the wrong end of those hollow point bullets. Like, that's really the kind of games he's playing. When you make those kind of threats and you're carrying guns around, that's how it can end. It doesn't matter that you're rich and famous. And somebody needs to sit him down and tell him that. Yeah,
that's a bad situation, and you don't want it to get worse. And again, if you're the NBA, you don't want that to get worse. Just from a business perspective. Well, I mean, from a person perspective, obviously. But from a business perspective, don't do this. You've got your whole future. You've got so much in front of you. Don't be an idiot. And frankly, that's what he's been. Any other headlines for you?
No, I think we'll call it good.
All right, that'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you as always by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit them online at blue.kansas.com. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll come back, talk a little college basketball, K-State preview for tonight, and more. That's all coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon, the first day of the month of March. The Munch, goodness gracious. Hey, by the way, we didn't say this the other day. Speaking of Munch, rest in peace to the great Richard Belzer.
Absolutely.
Who died over the weekend, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Munch, Detective Munch on SVU for a long time.
And other shows.
Yeah.
Like he played the same character on a whole bunch of different cop shows. It was great.
And he was awesome on all of them.
Yes.
Tremendous character. What was it? Homicide, Life on the Street?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome character. So rest in peace to the great Richard Belzer. Couple quick hitters I wanted to get to here on college basketball before we get to K-State tonight. One, the big story of the day that we still don't have any sort of details about. Caleb Grill is out at Iowa State. He has never been, a true superstar, but he's a household name in the Big 12, has been a good defensive player before, good shooter, Kansas kid. He's super close to TJ Otzelberger for years, ever since Otz was all the way back at South Dakota State. Committed to Iowa State a couple of times. He was at UNLV for a while before transferring back to ISU. No idea what the reasoning is, why Caleb Grill got kicked off the team for not living up to the standards of the program. But, man, that's bizarre. And it really does feel like I don't know. I don't want to oversell this, but it sort of feels like some sort of soft reset is coming for Iowa State. Not that, all right, it's time to clear house, Otzelberger's out, things like that. I mean, this will be back-to-back years in the NCAA tournament. Nothing like that. Certainly better than the godforsaken Steve Prohm years. My God, they were bad for a couple years there.
They went 0-18 in the conference.
Horrific. Truly horrific. And it was ugly basketball. Ugh. I'm not saying that, but it sort of feels like the way this year has crumbled. After last year, they fell apart late as well. Now you've got a guy who's been so loyal to the head coach getting kicked off the team for something. Sort of feel like maybe we're going to see a really new Iowa State roster next year. That's just the vibe I get.
There has been some speculation that Grill's play, this isn't speculation, this is just obvious, this is stuff you could see, that Grill's play really suffered and that his on-court demeanor kind of changed a little bit as he was going through some of the injuries that he's dealt with this year. He's had a nagging back injury that's had him in and out of the lineup. And I don't know, maybe that was affecting him off the court as well. That's certainly something that could happen, that could be part of the cause, is that there's just something that's affected him and started to affect some things that make it so you can't be a part of this team anymore. But beyond that, I mean, the timing of it. I mean, you've got one game left in the league. You're going into the tournament, but you're trying, I mean, they were a team that was in the mix for a Big 12 championship, and now they're just kind of clawing and scratching to try and win a game.
It's odd. It's strange. Best of luck to them, but man, that's very weird. That's very weird to happen at this time of year. Something must have really gone wrong, or there must have been an incident. At least that's what, I don't know. That's not a report. I'm just guessing, but I don't know why else that would happen at this time of year. On a lighter note and an extremely funny note, former Baylor Bear and current Illinois Fighting Illini forward Matthew Meyer said that he's been sick the last couple of days with caffeine poisoning. I've never heard of caffeine poisoning before. He said that he drank 5 Monster energy drinks while playing video games after they lost to Ohio State on Sunday, and today is the first day he's back at practice. 5 Monster energy drinks. Dude, your heart would explode. My heart would. I've never had one. They sound gross to me. I knew someone in high school who used to drink 3 a day, and he got hospitalized because he went cold turkey on them for some reason, and his heart slowed down to like 30 beats per minute. It was horrible. He legitimately missed school for 3 days because they hospitalized him.
Yeah,
because he went through withdrawal.
You can definitely overdo it. By the way, we have some breaking news on the Caleb Grill thing.
Let's do it.
From Caleb Grill, who has posted on his Twitter account an 8 screenshot long thread from the Notes app. I'll cut to the quick here at the very end, talking about himself. Lastly, one day when I am brave enough, I hope to be able to share my story about my mental health and the mental illness I've been battling through all season. While everyone was commenting about the hair or the funny actions on the court, it was a way for me to get out of that state of mind and feel like me being myself instead of the dark place I have been in this season. If it was not for the love and support from my favorite network back home, I'm not sure I would be alive, and I would have made a decision that would have affected so many people's lives. I love you all very much. I want to thank you for all you've done to help me get through these times. Unfortunately, I said something that I regret, which has cost me the opportunity to finish out my dream at Iowa State. I hope that all the players and Iowa State fans can find it in their hearts to forgive me. In the end, I want to be remembered as a Cyclone no matter what my next step is. I love Ames. I love Iowa State. I will hopefully become a booster or donor someday when I get older. I'm proud to be an alumni of this university.
Well, I mean, obviously the first reaction to that is, I hope he's okay. I mean, that's not something to take lightly. It was,
and that goes to, what some people on social media were openly speculating, that it seemed like just something was off different with him as he was going through some things with his injury. And there were some incidents on the court this year. There was that play he made where was it Disu or was it one of the Texas players? He undercut real bad.
I think it was Disu. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Iowa State, like just a pretty flagrantly dirty play that somehow didn't get whistled for a foul. There were some things that seemed out of character for him on the court that were happening like that. And there was a little bit of speculation that something is not adding up. And again, now that we have confirmation from the player himself that something's going on, that, you hope for the best for him. You hope that he's okay. You hope that he can move on. You hope that he can find peace. But saying something that got him kicked off the team that's a wrinkle. That's can only imagine what that might have been.
Yeah, and again, a guy who is so close to him in TJ Otzelberger, that's something. Again, I hope he's okay. I hope whatever he is dealing with, he is able to find help for it. I was going to say Patrick McCaffrey, I believe it is, in Iowa, who took a long stint off this season because he was having anxiety problems. That's nothing to mess around with, man. And I know that it's something that we still, as a people, as a collective, don't have a great grasp of handling and being able to talk about. So I hope he's okay. But, man, just a brutal end of the year for Iowa State. They are falling apart at the absolute worst time. I did want to get to Kansas State here before we get to another commercial break. They take on Oklahoma tonight. K-State, I don't know what the line is on this game. Okay,
7.5.
Oh, 7.5. Okay. So I guess that depends on where you get it. Oklahoma State stinks. Most of the betting money.
Oklahoma, you mean?
Oklahoma, yeah, I'm sorry. Oklahoma State has not played well either. But, yeah, Oklahoma stinks. They're the worst team in the conference. 85% of the bets in this game are on Kansas State. I don't see them losing. I know they do not have the kind of senior night streak like KU has, but they haven't lost since the Millard-Fillmore administration on senior night. But you're going to have a lot of emotion in that building, specifically for Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, when they get honored tonight, among the other seniors.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 3 wins in a row. Oklahoma's pretty much punted this season. Maybe it's a close game, but I have a hard time seeing a path to Oklahoma winning this one.
Yeah, it feels like this is a game Kansas State wins. It's a matter of harnessing that emotion and that energy for good, right? Not trying to do too much or, make the hero shot or the hero play on your senior night. Just staying within yourself and playing the kind of game that has gotten Kansas State to the level of success that they've experienced so far this year. If they play like they're capable of, that should be good enough to win. Oklahoma beat Kansas State the first time around. They shot 11 of 23 from the three-point arc. I don't think that's happening again at Bramlage Coliseum. I think Kansas State's going to do a much better job to be able to run them off the three-point arc. I also think they'll have David Gasson for this one.
Mm-hmm.
He only played 2 minutes in the first meeting.
That's right.
I think he's the best matchup for Tanner Groves. And a lot of the pick and roll stuff
mm-hmm.
that Oklahoma likes to do with Groves. So I think having him should neutralize what was really effective for Oklahoma offensively in that first meeting. And I think they'll limit them. They'll keep their point number down. And Kansas State, I think, should be able to keep him at arm's length most of the night.
Gasson is such an interesting piece for me for this K-State team because when he was out, it really, and we went over this last week, but it really felt like, man, that feels like a piece defensively in the middle that would really help this team out. And then, he was out. He missed a lot of time injured. Comes back for a few games. He seemed to be the missing piece. He was playing so much better inside. It felt like they had a stronger presence. They had a true 5-man out there. Then he started to slump, and K-State was going through their overall team slump as well. So who knows how much those two things are intertwined or how independent they are of one another. When he's on and K-State has that legitimate post presence, again, you take them against anybody and you feel pretty good about that K-State matchup. And if you can limit Tanner Groves, you can beat Oklahoma. I'm not all that worried about them unless he completely goes off. And I have a hard time seeing that.
Other than a shooting variance night, which you're always subject to those because this is college basketball.
Yeah.
Other than a shooting variance night, which is what happened in Norman, I think Kansas State has a lot more ways they can win this game.
Can they cover 7.5?
I'm going to say yes.
I feel like they can too. It just feels like such a lost season for Oklahoma.
Bramlage has been a party at its best this year, and I have a lot of trouble not envisioning the last game of the season kind of feeling a little bit like a party.
I hope it is. I hope it is a celebration tonight.
Do your work, get out to a 20-point lead, get Nate Aubrey in the game, make that the mission, right? Yeah. Get Nate Aubrey in the ball game tonight.
This should be a celebration of the season. This is your last chance. If you live near the area, if you're west of our Hontune Hills studios, you think, do I want to go to the game? Go. If you can find a secondary market ticket, go. Because this is the last time you're going to get to see this team, which has been a blast. This team has been so much fun all year. Go experience them, have fun, watch them one more time at Bramlage Coliseum. They deserve the attention, and I think it's going to be a blast. I think K-State's going to pick up the win tonight. I would take them minus 7.5 too. We've got another timeout to get to. We'll get to some other college basketball and otherwise best bets for the evening after this on 580 Sports Talk. few minutes of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. Don't forget to check out our website tonight, 580wibw.com. That's where our Fulton caster will have a recap from the K-State game tonight. And, of course, on our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW, you'll be able to go find Fulton's post-game recap. So go check that out. Go subscribe if you haven't already. That's the easiest way to always know when we are going live with the show, when we've posted a new video on YouTube. Again, our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button. Boom, you're all set.
You had a reaction video from Allen Fieldhouse last night. You also had a YouTube short that went up that somebody out there found by searching for the search term Uncle Roger. And I have a lot of questions.
I do too. Also, what was the other one?
American Truck Simulator?
Yeah. So someone YouTube searched for American Truck Simulator and came across my clip about how unique KU's conference success is. I don't know how it happens. I don't understand the algorithm, but you know what? I appreciate it. Thank you, YouTube or Google or whoever put that together. How does Uncle Roger tie in? Neither of those words were included anywhere in any of it.
Who Googles Uncle Roger?
You know your Uncle Roger's phone number? Now we try it on the Google.
Roger is a great uncle name.
Yeah, it is. That is a good uncle name. I had an Uncle Bob. Bob's a great uncle name.
I have an Uncle Ron. I think that's the premier.
Ooh. Okay, quick interjection. Have you ever seen the movie Captain Ron?
No, I have not.
Oh, man. It's got Martin Short in it.
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
Kirk Douglas. Yeah. Very funny. Fulton had never seen it either, but Fulton has never seen any movies.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, no movies in his recollection. I'll have to find out if Jake has seen it. I'm not sure if he has. It's a great movie. Great as in, like, it's entertaining, not like it's all that well made. Real quick, best bets for tonight. We're both on K-State -7.5. Anything else, college basketball or otherwise, standing out to you?
Maryland is red hot. Ohio State stinks. Ohio State is favored by 1.5 tonight in Columbus. That's one of those, to me, that says, if it smells fishy, fire up the grill and let's have some salmon for dinner. Especially because you can get Ohio State laying a 1.5 at +100 right now at FanDuel. There is so much money on Maryland.
I can understand what, man, I don't know. Ohio State's awful, although they did beat Illinois this weekend.
It smells fishy, but I'm taking the bait.
Yeah, that smells grotesque. I'm sad I didn't get any America East picks in last night because you were busy, so I didn't get any in last minute. So I've got another mid-major conference for you tonight, the ACC. Give me Pitt -3 at Notre Dame. I know it's on the road. I know Pitt's not great despite leading that conference. Notre Dame is horrible.
Last home game for Mike Bray. You're not worried about a little bump for the home team?
No, I'm really not. Colin Fall ain't walking through that door. No, pass. Also, depending on where you look, you might have been able to get USF, South Florida, as low as -12.5 against Tulsa. You could give me 90 points against Tulsa. I would bet against them. They're horrendous. I think they're 1-11 against the spread in their last 12 games. Give me the Bulls in that one. I also made a hockey pick for tonight. I saw a pick on Twitter. It's the first hockey game I've bet on all year. So we'll see. Go Carolina. Got the Hurricanes money line tonight.
Real quick, TCU -3.5 against Texas tonight.
Ooh.
Going to be an outright league title for KU?
No, I think Texas wins. I think Texas is going to play hard enough. They're going to win.
This is TCU's championship game. I think they get it done tonight.
It would mean a lot for that program if they can pick up that win. That's going to be a fascinating game. That's on tonight. K-State's on tonight. We'll recap it all coming up
K-State's
tomorrow.
on ESPN Plus, by the way, for everybody who...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, K-State's on the Plus. So we've got pregame coverage in the game on this radio station if you just want to listen.
Turn off all of your other devices that have a Wi-Fi connection to make sure your stream is as crisp as possible. Or, again, listen to the Wildcats Radio Network right here on 580 WIBW. Right now, it's time to get to a break. We'll come back, wrap up 580 Sports Talk with the final word. We're almost out of time, so we have to get to a really quick final word. Dan, you're first.
Kansas State, send those seniors out on a high note and get Nate Aubrey in the game tonight. That's got to be the mission for the Wildcats. Finish what has been a fun home schedule with a win against Oklahoma.
I've got one single final word for you. It's insane. KU has won its senior day game 40 years in a row. That is preposterous. It is outrageous. It is insane. They've won 17 conference titles in the best conference in America in 20 years under Bill Self. Absolutely ridiculous, insane, whatever adjective you want to use. KU with a hard-fought conference title. And by the end of tonight, they may know that they win that title outright as well. We'll be talking KU, K-State recap, obviously everything else from around the Big 12 with CJ Moore coming up tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk to Rick Peterson about all things high school basketball sub-state as well, and so much more. It's tomorrow from 3 until 6. But until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. We appreciate you listening to this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk.